We're gonna start in about, we're gonna get started in about another minute, but thank you everyone for joining early. Appreciate you. Get started in just a moment. All right, just so we're not having any dead air time while recording, I'm gonna have Winston do a joke for you all. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna put you on the spot like that. But we are gonna get going. It's 11:03, and we have 23 folks. I trust other people will join us shortly. So, good morning again. Welcome, everybody, to the next installment of our security training that we're providing today for all staff. As many of you know, we partnered with CSI, the Community Security Initiative, several months ago. Or actually, I should say, renewed a relationship and partnership that was existing in the past. And got things really cooking several months ago, where we started working in earnest to provide different types of trainings for our staff across the organization. And they've done a tremendous job for us so far in providing a series of active threat trainings that have been very helpful to our colleagues to learn how to be able to deal with different situations. And while their content is generally high level and broad, it can be focused and refined to apply to your particular circumstance or office location, whether you're working at an older adult center or you're in a residential facility or you're in a typical office building. Keep in mind that the information is intended to be high level, so that way it could translate and transfer across a variety of different types of facilities. So today, what we've asked them to do is to not just continue to provide general content that can be used for our staff writ large, but to focus in on everyday security procedures and best practices, specifically for managers. So as you notice, when the invite went out, it went out only to our management colleagues, because as leaders, we want you all to be equipped and prepared to be able to handle the day-to-day situations that might arise in a type of an emergency type of a scenario. And we don't want people to have to be scrambling and figuring it out on the fly. If we could be able to provide some training and some context that will be able to help you prepare well in advance. So as you know, we're also looking to build what we're calling a safety culture at JASA. And we're doing a variety of different things, from a vulnerability assessments, where we're going out into the community and, checking our sites and making sure if there are any vulnerabilities or risks that are presenting themselves, that we're taking the proactive measure to do everything from install new locks to additional security cameras. And in some cases, maybe even some construction that might need to be done in order to ensure that our facilities are fortified properly. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Seth Goodstein, who's one of the regional security directors that has been working with us. He's done the active threat training in the past, and he's the first up today to do this management training for you all. And we hope to be able to repeat it. So don't worry if any of your direct reports that are managers weren't able to make it today. We'll be able to repeat this at some time in the fall, I believe, so that way they can be able to attend. And I trust you're going to enjoy Seth's presentation. He did a great job for us before, and he's going to say a little bit more about himself during his presentation. But Seth, take it away.
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to be discussing an overview of daily facility operating procedures as it relates to security. So the training's geared, as Wayne had stated, to administrators and leaders that have limited experience relative to security operations. It's designed as a general overview, and each category will be discussed further, can be discussed further in subsequent trainings that we can do. So just to give you a little bit of background about what CSI is, the Community Security Initiative. It's a joint program between UJA Federation and the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. And we cover, and actually this will be updated, because not only do we cover New York City, Long Island, Rockland, and Westchester, now we cover the greater Hudson Valley north of Rockland and Westchester, all the way up to Albany as well. And essentially, for those of you that haven't been through any of the trainings before and aren't aware of what CSI does, essentially we are security consultants for the Jewish community, and we assist institutions, synagogues, JCCs, community centers, Jewish religious schools in all their security needs, from training to threat assessments and so on. For those of you that do not know me, just a little background about myself. I retired from the New York City Police Department in 2010 as a lieutenant. I then went on to work in senior management positions at Marriott International, most recently as the director of security at the New York Marriott Eastside Hotel. So what are we going to be looking at today? So we're going to go over some facility threats and typical vulnerabilities. We're going to look at opening and closing and midday procedures, identifying and how we report suspicious behavior, security searches, screening of people, mail, and deliveries. What do we do if we receive anonymous messages? Specifically, we've been hearing a lot about email threats. I'm sure you've all heard about those as well. And then the security plan for during daily operations. So what are some of the common threats and vulnerability? So of course we have natural hazards, we have accidents that occurred, whether it's a storm, whether it could be an earthquake, which we just experienced, thank God on a very low level in the New York metro area. Targeted violence, something that's targeted against the facility because of their ideological beliefs. Potentially, JASA is a Jewish organization, UJA funded. It could be something against either or both. Improvised explosive devices, something that is a device that's using not a typical explosive like you think of dynamite or something like that, but a pressure cooker, a propane tank strapped with explosives, things such as that. Using a vehicle as an improvised explosive device. Bomb threats, arson, suspicious persons, dealing with people that have mental health issues. And of course, we can't dismiss workplace employee violence as well. So what are the vulnerabilities? Remember, a lot of this, might not pertain directly as it was designed for religious institutions. So if you don't have religious services at your facility, you could just extrapolate that out for what you do have. So unrestricted access to the facility, unrestricted access to the perimeter of the facility, no vehicle or limited vehicle controls to going into your parking facilities at your locations, lack of control of visitors, windows and doors that can easily be compromised, and lacking those procedures or policies relating to building security. And of course, one of the biggest factors when we look at security is human error. People that prop open doors, people that forget to lock a door, window, leaving them open, things such as that, letting someone piggyback into the facility when they're not authorized to do so. It's one of the hardest things that we need to overcome when we're talking about security and human error. So security is an ongoing and it's a constant process. However, most security procedures start daily with the arrival of the first person at the facility. This will differ from normal business days and, of course, things that happen at the evening, things that might not be an everyday type of an event, and so on. We're going to look at opening, midday, and closing procedures. Opening procedures. What does the first person do when they arrive? So upon arrival to the location, we want to make sure that the first person or persons that are coming to the locations are doing a visual inspection of the perimeter. They're checking all secondary means of egress to ensure the doors are secure. Why? If you notice a door is open, that could mean someone either went into the facility, could mean something wasn't locked the night before, and so on, but it's going to lead you to believe that something needs to be checked further. Quite possibly, you might not want to go into that facility if you find a door that's ajar and you're the first person that comes in. Checking for suspicious persons, packages, windows, or doors that appear to be tampered with. Inside, was the alarm system on upon arrival? If you do have an alarm system, was it armed? If not, why not? Was it turned off? Was it disconnected? Checking the cameras for overnight activity. Who's doing this? Cameras are great for a facility, maybe for a deterrent, but many times people aren't utilizing them. They don't review them. They're not viewed live. So what can we do? We could look at these cameras in the morning to see if we notice anything out of place. This is where analytics can come into play, and it's a whole other conversation. Analytics such as detecting motion, detecting a person in the facility coming in a particular door, and so on. And I'll just reference you to a Ring camera. Many people probably on this call have Ring cameras. Ring cameras have analytics. You can go back and look at history the night before on your Ring camera and see person detected versus motion detected. Then you can go directly to that person detected. Oh, it's so-and-so coming home. Or why did I have a person detected at 2 in the morning, and who was that person coming onto my property? The same thing can be done with a little technology added to your camera system. And having a checklist. Having a checklist is great because this way, whoever's doing the inspection, you're not going to miss something. And I'll also point to things such as going into a restaurant. And many times you'll go into a restaurant and you'll see on the back of the door, there's a checklist that's hanging there. And it's for the person that's doing the maintenance and the upkeep on the bathroom throughout the day to check off. Did they check the soap? Did they check the paper towel holder and so on to make sure everything is not missed throughout the day and you make sure things aren't forgotten? So midday procedures. Remember, it's a continuous process to make sure we maintain building integrity. Who's looking at you? Who's watching the facility? We know that many attacks that occur, these individuals, these nefarious people, do pre-operational surveillance. They come to the facility, they look, maybe taking pictures and so on. Not all the time, but it does happen, and we find that often the case. What do we look for? Who are the people that are acting suspicious outside the facility? If you're in a location that it's a tourist location, yes, someone could be out there taking pictures. There's tourist attractions nearby potentially, or it could be something else that they're taking pictures of. But why are they taking pictures of the cameras? Why are they taking pictures of your security booth, your security guards, and so on? These are the things to start looking at to kind of gain that situational awareness and be able to, if you see something, say something. We hear that all the time, but it really holds true. Don't keep something to yourself. Make sure that you're reporting it. The best case scenario is no, that we figure out what it is. It's someone who's authorized to be there. Great. But if we don't report it and it turns out to be something that we should have, obviously it's something that we want to not miss. Are the cameras monitored during the day? If not, once again, those analytics might be able to be very helpful. So if you have a motion detected at a particular egress door that's not supposed to be used, it's alerted at either the security booth or staff to get an alert on their phone or whatever it might be to direct their attention to see why someone went out that door when they're unauthorized to do so. Who's ensuring the doors are secure when someone exits the facility? Someone goes out for smoking, a lunch break, etc. Do you have a day alarm? This is something that's tied into your alarm system. Do you have something that's going to alert someone that goes out that unauthorized door? Or if a door stays ajar, we want to make sure we're able to close those gaps. Are we getting an alert on that? And once again, we need to utilize security officers. We need to utilize technology to help out with that. You know, we mentioned, and I know we've mentioned in other trainings, security is everybody's responsibility, and that culture is only achieved by everybody's actions. The more eyes and ears we have out there, the better off we are, and the more likely we are to potentially stop something or detect something before it becomes something bad. What is your security team instructed to do during the day? This is one of the biggest gaps we see. Do the guards have post orders? Are they told what to do? What do we do if someone comes that we don't know? How do we handle that? Who do we notify? What are our procedures in place? Do we do patrols throughout the facility? Who's doing those patrols? How are we documenting those patrols to make sure that we're checking the doors? That checklist, right, comes into play as well. Who covers the guards for breaks? Many times there's one guard on property. Who's covering them and what type of training do they have? And are they familiar if that is the case with what the post orders should be and the procedures. If you have volunteers, what are the volunteers versus the paid guards doing? What equipment can the guards carry? What are they authorized to be able to have, whether it's a flashlight, radio, so on and so forth. If you have armed security, obviously that goes into them being armed with a firearm. Is there a security plan and do they know it? Do they know what to do in an active threat situation? Do they know what to do in a fire? You know, security is really an all hazards approach. We want to look at security from all different perspectives, whether it's man-made, natural, whether it's a threat coming in from the outside or a threat from the inside. Remember, we touched upon that employee violence as well. What is the plan in place? Are they aware of it? Closing procedures. Who's checking all the doors and the windows, last one out or last person's out from the facility, making sure that we have everything locked and secure. You want to check all areas of the facility to ensure that no persons are left inside. Ensure the cameras are functioning. If we have an intrusion detection system, an alarm system, we want to make sure that is armed before we leave the facility. And then when we're exiting, we want to check the grounds. Is there anybody suspicious outside? Is there anything we need to be concerned about at the end of the day? Other things to consider. Who's going to respond or who gets notified when an alarm goes off in the middle of the night? Do we respond? How do we make that decision? Is there a phone tree for alarm activations? How does the fire department gain access to the facility? How does the police department gain access to the facility after hours? Do they have access to a key? Someone that can come with a key? Can you view your cameras remotely? Do the cameras have motion alerts on them to direct you to particular locations? And once again, analytics as well. So identifying and reporting suspicious behavior. Who in your organization is tasked with reporting non-emergency situations to the police department? We know that everybody is empowered to call 911 if there is a true emergency. But if there's a non-emergency situation, you have a homeless person who's constantly sleeping in front of the door, you have other issues on a non-emergency basis. A, do you know how to get in touch with your local precinct, with community affairs and other contacts, the precinct commanding officer and so on? Do you have those contact numbers? If key individuals are not present at the location, is there someone else that's tasked with doing this if need be, if that one person you have designated is not there that day? What is the reporting structure internally? How do you now, if you have an incident occur, report through your chain of command within JASA to make sure everybody who needs to be notified is notified? And internal communications to avoid those duplicate notifications. How do you do that? And how do you have, and this goes back to your planning and your procedures. Is this written down what to do in a particular instance, a particular threat, a particular type of an emergency situation, and how to do it? So detecting suspicious behavior. What is it? So anything that's out of the norm. You know, I go back to the hair standing up on the back of your neck. If that's happening, something's not right here. What is this person doing? A lot of times you'll see someone or persons and you say, something doesn't look right what they're doing. What is that person doing there? Why are they lingering? Why are they loitering at this location? It's not usual for someone to be there. Why are they dressed in completely inappropriate behavior for 95-degree weather like we're going to have potentially today, and they're wearing a long jacket and a hat? Why? Are they trying to make attempts to get into the location? Do they look like they're trying doors at the location? Taking pictures or prolonged interest, doing it in a covert manner. They're trying to hide taking that photo or taking pictures. They're asking strange questions. You know, how many security guards do you have at the location? Are they here all the time? How much staff do you have at the location? Things such as that are really, why are you asking that? Why are they trying to size up the location and find out more information that really is none of their business? You know, this could happen on the phone too. Oh, do you have security? You know, I'm interested in coming there. Think about that when you're answering those questions and realize that you shouldn't be giving out your security protocols to anybody that's unauthorized to have them. Is someone abandoning a package? They come, they leave a backpack, they walk away. It's going to be a key indicator. What's going on? Could it be someone that's working on the next corner? Yeah, possibly. We need to look into it. We need to look into something like that quickly. And then we need to make those notifications to the police department if we have a package or an object that's not identified and is suspicious, to be able to have the police come and investigate it and make sure that it's not something that's going to harm anybody. By the way, as we go through the presentation, I neglected to mention, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. Jamie from my team is going to be collecting those questions, and we'll do a Q&A after the presentation. So feel free, as you pops into your head, pop it into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions afterwards. So screening for people in delivery. New members to the facilities. First of all, how do you do that? How do you deal with a new member to identify them properly? How do you make arrangements if someone shows up at your door without an appointment? Do they need an appointment? Who's vetting them to make sure that they're not any particular threat to the institution? How do you welcome them? Employees onboarding and offboarding. How do we onboard our employees with security? How do we make sure that we document the keys that they're getting, the key fobs that they're getting, codes, anything else they need for the facility? Remember, all these things we want to get back or be able to change after they either resign or they're terminated, retire, whatever it might be, as part of your process. But security should definitely be within your process with onboarding. Here's our procedures. This is what you're expected to do. This is who you notify in the event of A, B, or C, and make sure they're aware of that. We talked about an active threat training, the screening of individuals, and talking about the 3 buckets. You know, how do we determine? We have the known individuals, our known employees, our members that come for services on a daily basis that we know. And then we have the known unknown, the ones that we have an appointment, but we haven't met them yet. Until we establish proper identification, they're that known unknown. And then you have the unknown person that just shows up. They're going to get the most scrutiny, or should be getting the most scrutiny, to determine whether you're going to admit them into your facility. The bottom line is nobody should be coming into your facility without being properly authorized. Mail-in deliveries. How do we screen for suspicious packages? I'm going to show, on the top left, you'll see, we'll have a few slides later on also, but is it suspicious? Is there excessive postage? Is it just titled Chief Executive Officer, no names, no return address, and so on? Is something leaking from it? Do you see any powder coming from it? Do you have any wires coming from it? Keep this in mind. And obviously, if you come across something like that, you're not going to, you touch it, you want to isolate it, you want to move it to another location, you want to isolate the people that came in contact with it and not expose potentially more people to this suspicious package. As I said, do we allow walk-ins for new members? What are our procedures for new people coming into our location for services? Do you have an application form? Do they need to have a referral? Do you do potentially any background checks on the individual? And key here is, do you let them in without a scheduled appointment? And how do you evaluate without that appointment on site to be able to do so? So these are things that hopefully have been put into place already as far as procedures and policy, but determine, if not, how to do these different things. Onboarding of employees, we recommend background checks, drug screenings, training them in those security procedures. If you don't have a formalized orientation training for new hires, it's good to have one in place and create one if you do not. And once again, that documentation of keys and electronic or metal keys, obviously codes for computers and so on and so forth that you might have. Offboarding, make sure you get everything back. If you're giving out metal keys, you don't get them back, it might cause you to have to rekey the whole building. So it's important. And, we recommend, if you can get away from the metal keys, it makes it a lot easier with electronic access control, even if someone loses that fob, to eliminate it from your system. Removing from computer access, and I recommend you remove them before, if you're going to be terminated, especially for cause. Remove them from access before you let them know they're terminated, so they can't do anything to your computers or download anything afterwards. And remember, just because an employee is terminated doesn't mean they're no longer a threat. So especially if you terminate someone for cause, whether, and especially if it's threats and things like that, we've seen situations where employees have come back even years later and performed some type of an attack against the institution. So if you can, find a way to have the ability to monitor them. If someone has access to their open source their open source social media, to be able to look at that. Sometimes you'll have someone that is friends with them on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it might be, to be able to look and see, are they now posting threats about the institution? Are they saying things that would lead, you have to do further steps with potentially with law enforcement? And LinkedIn, for instance, you notice, oh, they got another job. They're working according to LinkedIn at such and such. Okay, well, maybe now our threat level is a little bit lower because they're gainfully employed. Doesn't mean eliminated, but things such as that you can get public access to, it's good to be able to follow and look at this individual and not just say, well, they were terminated and that's it. We never need to worry about them again. You need to be cognizant. Are they lingering around your building? Does someone see them around your location? They don't live next door. What are they doing there? And so on. And by the way, another checklist for this. Make sure we have a checklist for onboarding and offboarding. We want to make sure we don't miss anything and everybody is onboarded, offboarded equally across the board as well. These are our 3 buckets, and we talked about it already, but have a plan, have a procedure. How do you deal with those known people as opposed to the people that you don't know when they're coming over to the facility? And remember, if you have a facility that happens to be open and people can walk in, don't walk by someone you don't know without engaging them. Hi, can I help you? Hi, welcome. How can I assist you? It could be someone who's lost. They don't know where they're going. They're legitimately supposed to be there. But if it's not, you're able to hopefully intercede. And it could be something as simple as someone trying to come in and steal something, not necessarily a physical threat. And by you engaging them, they leave. Don't leave it to someone else. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable, make sure you're addressing it, but engage that person. As I mentioned, I worked in the hospitality business. We called that aggressive hospitality. And you have to do it in a nice way. You don't want to speak to people poorly, but think about it from a hotel perspective. Security comes in, and my offices that I had there, they were supposed to engage with someone coming through the door in a very nice way. Hi, can I help you? Welcome to the New York Marriott East Side. And a lot of times, like, oh, can you show me where to check in? And sure, let me walk you over. Here you go. A lot of times it's someone coming in off the street. Oh, I'm just here. Can I use your bathroom? No, I'm sorry. We don't have a public restroom. Someone up on the floors in hotels, especially, you have people, they call them creepers. Hotels and office buildings, they go in to try to creep into the building undetected and steal. If they're engaged by people, they don't want to be detected. They don't want someone to speak to them. They want to go unnoticed. So even from a crime perspective, you need to engage these individuals that can deter a lot of different things. Who's charged with doing that? Who do you have in the front? But ultimately, everybody should do that. I can't tell you how many institutions I go into. And when I go, I do a little bit of a penetration test when I get there. I'm authorized to come in, but people generally don't know me when it's my first time there. And I want to see, was I able just to come in unabated? Is the first interaction when I'm standing in front of someone at a desk rather than at the door at an intercom? Was I able to get in through an ajar or open door? And then I'm quickly, obviously, with my initial meetings, bringing this to the attention of the people I'm meeting with. Why? Not to embarrass them, but to have them address it, because it's a potential lapse in security. We want to strike a balance. We want people to feel welcome. We want them to feel glad they're coming there. That's why it's all the way, that's why we say aggressive hospitality. You want to be nice. You want to be welcoming. You don't want people to feel, the first interaction, wherever you go, that could be the way you feel throughout your interactions at that facility and could turn a lot of people off. And I go back to the hotels. If someone is treated bad when they first walk through the door, that could set the tone for their whole vacation, their whole business trip, whatever it might be. It's the same with your program recipients or a potential employee that's coming in. There's a way to speak to people, and you have to make sure, especially when you're dealing with security offices, that you have the right ones that are engaged in that front-facing position within your facility, because a lot of times those are the first people that people communicate with when they come to your location. So it's important to have the right person there. All right, so those anonymous calls, right? You get a bomb threat. Do you have a checklist by all your phones, a bomb threat checklist? So as that person calls, even if after they hang up or while they're on the phone, you're able to, how did they speak? What did they say? And write it down right away using this checklist that's by the phone before you forget different things. And the key things that are on there, it's important to have. If you don't have it, we can provide it to you so you can use it. You can put your logo on top for JASA. You can make modifications, but it's a starting point to have. Don't get frazzled. You know, not to say it can't happen, but typically bombers don't threaten, they bomb. At least in recent times. Doesn't mean we dismiss it. We want to make sure we're addressing it appropriately. Most of what we're seeing now is not those phoned-in bomb threats, although it has happened, and I've heard even recently a few locations that I've had in Queens where I cover. But most of the time, we're receiving mass emails to locations with very non-specific language that hundreds of institutions are getting. Not credible. Those are things that you get them, notify law enforcement, but our advice, depending on what it is, if it's not a credible threat, it's not specific to your institution, I wouldn't be evacuating. Obviously, that'll be in discussions with law enforcement and up to you and the institution as well, but keep that in mind. That's exactly what some of these people look to have. They want to cause that disruption. They want to have you evacuate the building for something that is sent to 100 locations throughout the country. Now, if you're getting something that's more credible, they're giving detailed locations, specific names, specific locations within your facility. Okay, now we're maybe taking that with a different type of a approach. And that's something that might call for an evacuation, might call for a search and so on. So each one is case by case. But who gets the message and how do you analyze it? And of course, any of these threats, you want to call 911, get the police involved. Will you do a search? If a search is called for, who's doing it with law enforcement? Someone that knows that facility inside and out, maintenance staff. They're your key people that are going to know the facility and be able to link up with law enforcement so you don't miss different locations. And then how do you communicate, whether it's internally, public address, handheld radios, and then how do you tell people that are coming to the location, hey, don't come right now, without alarming them fully, but telling them, hey, we got an incident going on with law enforcement, we'll advise further, but please do not come to the location at the current time. How are you communicating with your stakeholders? Package screening. And this is more expansive on the left, and you could download these from the United States Postal Service, and you can post these up, things to look for. But those are some of the things. And it's important for people to be familiar. So a lot of times, you know, we'll see people, they'll open up that suspicious letter and they'll start showing it to everybody. And if there's white powder, they bring it from one room to the other, and then other people are being exposed to it. You want to not do that. You want to limit the exposure. If you can wash your hands and so on, but don't bring it someplace else. Leave the package where it is. If you notice anything suspicious, especially like this, don't open it. Call law enforcement, have them come, they'll deal with it, and better safe than sorry. These are like the typical things that you would see. So now you open up a letter and you find something that's a threat. Same thing, you know, you don't want to photocopy it. You want to leave it where it is. It doesn't have to have a substance. It might not be concerned with that, but you want to notify law enforcement, have them come. You don't want to now contaminate it and make a photocopy of it. And potentially, if they can get any types of evidence from the letter itself, to have more people touching it and so on. So it's important, you know, you could maybe take a picture with your phone if you needed to and send it to law enforcement if they requested it, but they're going to come to the location and call them. And the key thing is, do you have a procedure for screening? What is your procedure when dealing with something that's suspicious? So those bomb threats, once again, bombers typically bomb, they don't threaten. A lot of the time it's a tactic that's been used to interrupt operations, cause economic damage or loss in revenue. People that give a bomb threat, they could be charged with falsely reporting an incident, maybe aggravated harassment, terrorism or hate crime enhancements, depending on what the actual threat is in the language. Been very common, and unfortunately they're getting much more common, especially via email. Like I said, most of these that you've been seeing, they didn't need to evacuate. And our recommendation would be not to, with the ones that we've been seeing. However, each one is taken individually, and you have to make that decision at the time. So you get a threat, activate your plan. Notify law enforcement first, activate your plan. What's the plan? Has the staff been trained on it? And then there's things called tabletop exercises where at a staff meeting, at a meeting like this, you can go over a scenario. Here's the scenario. This is the threat that's received. What are we doing at this point? And it might be a good starting point to see, what does everybody do? Are they familiar with a plan if you have one? If they're not, we know that's a gap that we have to fill. Who are our search teams if it needs to? What are our routes of evacuation from the facility? And that could be as simple as a fire. It doesn't have to be a bomb threat, but do we know how to get out? Do we know what our meeting points are at the facility? If we have inclement weather, do we have a location that we can have people shelter in while a building is being searched or evacuated, and so on? So evaluating the threat, we put them in different categories: low, medium, and high risk. And when we talk about some of these like bomb threats that have been coming, those are really low risk, right? They're very vague, they're very indirect. That threat, it's inconsistent, it's not plausible, it lacks any type of detail. The caller maybe has called the location numerous times, you've been getting a lot, or emails and so on that you've been getting, or you've been getting numerous emails. Maybe the threat was discovered on a wall in a bathroom, could have been there for months. Someone wrote a threat on the wall. Doesn't mean you're not going to address it, but just keep in mind, what is the level of threat? We look at a medium threat. It's more realistic that it can be carried out, although it might not be entirely realistic. So the threat's direct, it's feasible. The wording suggests that that perpetrator has given some thought on how that threat will be carried out. It may include a time and place. No strong indication that that perpetrator has done that pre-operational surveillance that we talked about. They increase that specificity, I'm serious, or I really mean this, and so on and so forth. Then when we look at the high threat, now it's more specific, it's more realistic. It may include names of people that work at your facility, locations within that facility in which, that's really, they're giving descriptive details of that particular location that someone maybe from the outside wouldn't normally know. Maybe they give their identity of the individual or their supposed identity. The threat suggests that they've really taken steps on how to carry it out. And maybe the perpetrator indicates they've practiced, they know how to use this weapon, or they know how to use this device. This is something that obviously is going to be taken a lot more seriously with law enforcement and the review of the building and the search of the building. And that's the key. Do we evacuate? Might not always be the correct decision. Those mass emails sent to 100 locations, same language, nothing specific. I had it happen in my own synagogue. I didn't evacuate. We know our building is secure. We have an alarm system. We have cameras. There's no been breach. We're able to see that no one was able to get into the building. It's not plausible. We made the decision not to evacuate. That's why if you're using an alarm system, cameras to your advantage, it will help when making these different types of determinations, whether it's a credible threat or not. Now, with that, building management, if you're in a particular building, can order it. The police can order an evacuation if they determine it's credible. And obviously, if a package is found, it's also going to be weighed into that determination whether to evacuate the building. Searching, who's the best qualified? Trained police officers and building staff with proper training on what to look for with those trained police officers. Nobody knows the area better than people that work in the building. And they know what the baseline is. They know that that's not something that's ever been there, or this particular location, that this door should never be in this position, and so on. This particular location, yes, we could tell it was tampered with, and so on. And we mentioned this. What's our chain of command? Remember, everybody is empowered to call 911 in a true emergency. So we talk about communication. What do you have in your building? Do you have public address? Are you using those handheld radios? Do you have text and WhatsApp groups? How do you tell people not to come to the building? External communications, 911. Do we have panic alarms if we can't get to the phones for some reason? Here in New York City, it's going to be 911 to call for law enforcement for emergency situations, fire or police, same thing. You know, when we look at our security philosophy, you know, we want a layered approach. We want to have hardening our facility, doors, windows, locks, alarms, cameras, access control, and so on. We want to have those law enforcement relationships. So if you don't know the commanding officer of the precinct that you're in charge of a facility, if you don't know who the community affairs officers are at the precinct, you need to. The neighborhood coordination officers, if you're in New York City as well, from the precinct, the more contacts you have, the better off it is. Colleyville, Texas, when Rabbi Citron Walker was being held hostage by that attacker a couple of years ago, he was texting with the chief of police from that police department. Why? Because weeks earlier they met, they exchanged information, they had that. And although he wasn't able to make a phone call, he still was able to text and give vital information, unbeknownst to the attacker, to law enforcement as to what was going on inside. Do we have locations to shelter in place, a safe zone within the facility where we could further harden ourselves inside? And intelligence through law enforcement, through CSI, our intelligence team, obviously, if we come across something that is related to the institution, we're going to let you know, and we also let law enforcement know if we come across something on social media or on the web and so on. So these are just some links, and you can get this. You know, the Postal Service link is here as well for those posters, and I recommend printing them out, putting them up on the wall for how to detect suspicious mail and packages and so on. And I got to tell you, true to form, I've seen letters that have come in. I'm sure Jamie has seen letters that have come in her professional life as a retired detective from NYPD as well. They really do fall into those categories of that excessive postage and, you know, that no name on it and writing personal on it and so on, no return address. It really does, a lot of them come across that way. So it's actually very interesting. Why do they put so much postage? Because if they're mailing something, they don't want it to get returned or not sent through because they didn't put enough postage on it. So they put more than is enough to make sure, without having to go and weigh it, that it's going to go through. So with that, I will turn it over to Jamie if there's any Q&A that we can go through. And